Mom will enjoy the theme song, I believe.
Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man for president who's seasoned through and through, but not so doggone seasoned that he won't try something new? A man who's old enough to know
And young enough to do.
well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
But it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you want a man with spirit who is not afraid to fight?
A man whose record shows that he will fight for what is right.
A loyal man who'll bring the job a fresh new point of view? Well, it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
Cause it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
And do you deny to any man the right he's guaranteed to be elected president, no matter what his creed?
It's promised in the Bill of Rights to which we must be true.
So it's up to you, it's up to you. It's strictly up to you.
And it's Kennedy, 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 for me. Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Do you like a man who answers straight, a man who's always fair?
We'll measure him against the others, and when you compare, you cast your vote for Kennedy and the change that's overdue. So it's up to you, it's up to you, it's strictly up to you.
Yes, it's Kennedy, 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 for me.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy.
Hello, everybody. This is Cole Goodman, the temporary host of the Other Side of Information with the amazing Jeff Kennedy. And just to go off that theme song, it is up to you, and it is up to us to make sure that we hold our government accountable, we stay informed, we talk about the major issues that are at play in our country and internationally. And boy, do I have a great guest of honor here today. In our previous shows, I gave you guys kind of a little sneak peek of who it would be. I mentioned her on the last show, but I'm gonna let Dr. Joyce Davis get into a little more about her background and what she's had to go through. We're going to talk about the current state of the country. But to all the viewers out there listening right now, it would be not transparent for me to say that not only is Dr. Joyce Davis my mother, but she is someone who got on me when I had socks on the floor in my bedroom. But I'm very grateful to have her as my mom, and definitely growing up seeing what she has accomplished, which we will get into in this program. But Dr. Davis, Ma, I'm so glad to have you on the program, and I would love to have you start out by just introducing yourself. You've worked many places internationally, has been a journalist, an international journalist. So just wanted to give you the floor about a little bit about your background.
Well, what an introduction. I'm not sure anybody could have given that introduction other than you. And it's amazing how he remembers the socks on the floor, because those were always battles that we had. Anyway, it's great to be here with you. Yes, I have had quite a career in journalism, and for a little stint of my career in government, as you well know, working with the city of Harrisburg. But where would I begin? Let's just say we'll begin when I was 19 years old, which was maybe yesterday, and
Definitely yesterday.
and I was a junior at Loyola University in New Orleans, studying journalism and modern foreign languages. I love languages. I love studying languages. It goes along with travel. But I got an offer at the time, believe it or not, to become a reporter for what the New Orleans Times-Picayune. And that was like a dream come true, and it was out of the blue. And why would they offer such a position, a reporter's position, to a college student who's not yet graduated, who's in their junior year? Well, it has to do with all the things we're talking about these days. It has to do with diversity. They didn't call it diversity then. They called it, someone filed a lawsuit claiming that they were discriminating at that newspaper, and and the judge found them guilty, and they had to quickly hire some black people. That's what we call it. And if it hadn't been for that lawsuit, I would not have been plucked out of, because there were no journalists at that. There were no black journalists who were running around, right? Because the field was closed to us. But the new and upcoming young people were in college. And really, after I got hired, a group of young black people who were actually at Loyola with me ended up being hired as well over the subsequent years. So that's where it began. 1972 in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I stepped in as a nightside reporter working 3 to 11. And the truth is, they didn't really expect me to do much. They just thought, well, sit and answer the phone, and we're doing our duty. We've answered the judge's ruling, and we have hired a black person. Well, it wasn't long before I was there that a very big event happened in New Orleans, a sniper shooting. A man went up to the top of high-rise Howard Johnson Hotel and started shooting people. Well, as it turns out, it was a young black man called Mark Essex who went up and did that. And he lived in a notorious area of New Orleans called Desire, the Desire Projects. And most of the white people, the white reporters, were too afraid to go into Desire. But I wasn't. I got in my car, went to Desire. I went looking, actually, to speak to Mark Essex's mother. Where did he live? Because I wanted to talk to her about why would her son go up to the top of Howard Johnson and start shooting.
Instead, and was he in jail? I apologize, Mom. Was he in jail at the time when you were doing this, or was he still on the run?
He was dead. He had died. They had killed him during that siege, and people were just trying to figure out what happened. Who was this? I mean, this was shocking to that city, which at the time was not fully an integrated city. People were not, I mean, there was a white community and a black community, right? So, and the white people were asking, what is going on here? What are these black people doing? What's happening, right? So I got in my car, and I didn't tell them where I was going. I just went into the Desire Project looking for where he lived, seeing if I could speak to his mother or something. But I ended up finding his girlfriend and getting an in-depth interview with her. And I telephoned that in. They said, where have you been? When I called, and I said, I've got a major story for you. I've spoken to the girlfriend of Mark Essex. They said, what? They said, stop the presses. We'll run with it. But that is what bringing this community, the black community, into journalism did. Because there were stories that would never have been gotten had it not been for black reporters. So that's where it began. But from there, I stayed with the New Orleans Times-Picayune for about 18 years, off and on. I say off and on because I left twice to live abroad. I always wanted to live abroad, and so I just packed up and left. I left to go live in Athens, Greece, for 2 years, and then I went again. I got a journalism fellowship to study in Paris, international journalism. So I went there for a year. And so that basically, when I came back, I stayed with the New Orleans Times-Picayune until 1990, when I got an offer to go and join the National Public Radio as their Middle East editor. And that was because I had made a name for myself actually covering the Middle East just on my own, and had gotten a blockbuster interview with a man some of you may know called Yasser Arafat, who was, nobody got an interview with Yasser Arafat. I mean, he was somebody that people wanted to talk to because he was head of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization. But through the contacts I had, I was able to go to Tunisia and to talk to Yasser Arafat in his compound with the PLO. And came out, learned about the inside workings of the Palestine Liberation Organization, got an interview with him, photos with him, and it was splashed on our newspaper and in another journal that I worked for. That kind of catapulted me into the attention of some people because I'm a pretty daredevil reporter. I will go and do things that others are not able to do. And so I did. And then I joined National Public Radio, packed up, left New Orleans, said goodbye, and frankly never looked back to go and live in New Orleans, and stayed in Washington for the next 15 or so years, where actually where your childhood was spent, in that Washington area. We were living in Northern Virginia, and I was working in Washington, and the commute between those two places was frankly a nightmare. Everybody who's lived
I
in
bet.
Washington knows it's bad.
Yep.
It can be
Yep.
bad at any time. So that's a little bit of how I got to the national scene. And I worked with National Public Radio for about 8 years. I worked with them as a Middle East editor. I became a deputy foreign editor. Then I served as foreign editor as well, the chief of that. And then I moved up to something called director of news staffing, because we needed to start hiring and to break through and get more people of color hired. And I did that for a while, and then I switched and I got offered a job with Knight Ridder newspapers, which then was the second largest newspaper chain in the country. This is when journalism was important. It was at its heyday. Reporters were highly respected. Newspapers were highly respected. If you were an informed person, you had to read the newspaper. It's not like it is today, where unfortunately most people think they don't need to read the newspaper. But then it was, and the Knight Ridder owned things like the Philadelphia Inquirer, the San Jose Mercury News, the Detroit Free Press. So my byline was appearing all over the country. But more than that, I supervised reporters who were stationed all over the world. And you probably never heard of something called Operation Desert Storm, but it's when American troops stormed into Iraq, and I had to be responsible for getting reporters from all over the country. I supervised them getting embedded with the military, because that was the first time reporters could be going into war zones with the military. And I had to get them equipment, because at that time we thought there was going to be poisonous gas. We thought he had chemical weapons, all of that stuff that turned out not. So we spent a whole lot of money trying to equip our reporters to be protected, right? Gas masks that were expensive, and vests, that bulletproof vests. And so I stayed there for a while, and then my dear friend Michelle Dubac, right?
Yep.
So Michelle
Yep.
Dubac, I had actually connected her to be able, and she became a very important person at a very important place called Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. And I connected her and she ended up being the associate director of broadcasting, which is the top position, overseeing broadcast services around the world to many different places. It was so instrumental during the Cold War, because Radio Free Europe, through government funding and help, provided information to people in communist societies where there was no free press, where they didn't know what was going on. That's why they called it the Iron Curtain. Nothing got in. But Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, our radio signals were able to get in. And people like Václav Havel, president who ended up becoming president of the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia at the time, he was in prison. And he would secret a radio to be able at late at night to pick up the signal for Radio Free Europe. And he could then know what was going on around the world and even in his own country. Because remember, this radio, they broadcast in the languages of the people who are listening.
Right, right.
So, and you know a little bit about Radio Free Europe too, because you were even an intern there and you spent your childhood.
It's important work. It's really important work, and people depend on that press for sure. And we're definitely going to get into that, especially with the attacks that Radio Free Europe has been under. But I just want to let you continue.
Well, that takes me to when I worked for Radio Free Europe, and that almost in the middle of that, I wrote 2 books. I wrote one book as a fellow with the United States Institute of Peace, and we need to talk about the United States Institute of Peace, which has also been closed down. But I wrote my first book there called Profiles Between Jihad and Salam, Profiles in Islam, where I went around talking to leaders of Islamic movements to really just get a sense of what was the divide between the Western world and the Islamic world. Because in the 90s, that was the big issue. what's going on in this part of the world? Do we have to worry about Muslims? Are they organizing to attack the West? There was all of that, not understanding that part of the world, and great Islamophobia in our country
Right.
and in the West. Great Islamophobia. You didn't know them, you didn't understand them, you didn't trust them. It's a foreign religion. We don't like it. But I
Pre
would go.
pre pre 9/11 too.
Oh yes, oh definitely pre
Yes.
9/11.
So
No, I was in the
yeah.
early 90s when I was going around, because, but there were glimmers that this part of the world, the hostility that was there, was coming to the fore. And what was worrying was that this part of the world was also not willing to be dominated anymore. They were rising up against Western powers that had basically oppressed them pretty badly, taken their natural resources to bring back to the West. Oil. That's why we care about oil there. So that was broiling at that time, and I thought, I want to find out what's going on. And I went around the world to talk to leaders of Islamic movements that were coming to the fore. These Islamic movements were claiming to be able to liberate the Islamic world from the oppression of the West. And so I went and talked to some of the leading experts, the leading figures there. Places like Saudi Arabia and Sudan and Malaysia, Indonesia, wherever I could get someone that I knew was well respected in the Muslim world, Syria, as well as Jordan, I went to. That was my first book. And then I was working on a second book in the 2020 about Islam's teachings about terrorism and martyrdom and all of that. And I was almost finished the book, and guess what happened? September 11th.
Mm, yeah.
So I then went back into the region. When I say the region, I mean the Middle East, and did interviews to try to get a sense of who did this, who did it. And frankly, my story was the first story that pinpointed who was behind this attack. I go back, you'll say Osama bin Laden is who I said. And
Mm,
and the reason I knew that is because, remember, I'd been reporting, I had contacts. They were sending me information, faxing me information from their spokesperson in London on a regular basis. So I even had the phone number of Al Qaeda, their base in Kandahar, where they were. So I knew what was, and I knew he was behind it, and had not so much done it himself, but had provided financing and support for the people, because a lot of people were coming to Kandahar and to him asking for support. And I guess he thought this one had a chance, even though if you listen to the tapes afterwards, he expressed surprise. I can't believe they did it. They actually did it. It's kind of what he said. Can you believe these guys actually? So he made it possible, even though he didn't do it himself.
yep.
But it was his network that, his support, because he was a rich man. Remember, he was rich. His family came from Saudi Arabia, and
Yeah.
he was all right. So that takes me to where, when I was at um, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and in 2000, the winter of 2007, actually Christmas, I packed up with you in tow, and my husband Russell, of course, and we left Prague to come to a place, a very strange place called Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And it was quite different, so different from Prague that, of course, like night and day. But that's how we got here. And so the Christmas of 2007, we landed at Hershey, Pennsylvania, stayed in the Best Western, I think that was there, and began where we are now, our becoming Pennsylvanians. That's my career.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, because I want to pinpoint different things that you spoke on and said. So we are seeing right now the assault from this current administration on, they tried to defund Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and then a lawsuit was filed, and they withdrew, or they stopped the not trying to defund Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. But what we see with this administration is they will not stop trying. They will not stop trying. And can you speak on what would that do for someone who doesn't really know the importance of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, if if they were wiped out, if they were defunded, what negative consequences would that have on the United States and internationally?
Well, first of all, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty is a historic, it's almost historic legacy of America's promotion of democratic values around the globe. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty was the way America helped spread democracy behind the Iron Curtain. So in those days when Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, all of those, Belarus, the Central Asian countries that I came to know so well, they had no way to get information. There was no free press where they were. They only knew what the people, the Soviet Union leaders, the communists wanted them to know. Had it not been for this voice, this radio that was broadcast and beamed that they tried to block, they would not know anything. And that's why I tell you that someone like Václav Havel in prison, it was so important to him. That voice, that Radio Free Europe, and the Voice of America too, we can talk about that. They were so important that after the wall fell, the Václav Havel, when he was president of then Czechoslovakia, later became Czech Republic, we were going to end Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. They were going to, it was based in Berlin. They were going to close it down because they say, well, communism is over. We've won. There's no more Iron Curtain. Time to go home. But Václav Havel said, no. There are still closed societies. There are still people around the world who need this kind of service. And he said, you come, I'm president now in the Czech Republic. You come here. We will give you the whole place where communism used to function. We will give you the Communist Party headquarters in the center of Prague, where you will operate for $1 a year. We will charge you $1 a year.
That's a nice rent.
And you were in the building. You know what a magnificent place it was. I had an office there on the second floor, looking out over. And so that was so important, and it was important because when I was brought in to Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, my job was to broadcast to countries, to supervise services to much of the Muslim world. So the services that I broadcast, that I supervised, were to Iran, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, and to all the countries of Central Asia. So these also were countries where their governments didn't want them to hear anything but what they were. Saddam Hussein only wanted them to hear what he wanted. The Ayatollahs in Iran didn't want outside information coming into their people, right? So we provided that. And even now, places like Belarus, actually we were broadcasting to Russia. They've cut that now. And it looks like they've cut it with the permission of our president, Donald Trump. He doesn't care if we continue to broadcast truth to the people of Russia. So this voice would be closed. These countries would have no way of getting actual solid information. And we would lose a very valuable way that we're promoting democracy, human rights, and the rule of law around the world. Right. So we would really abrogate our responsibility, what we've come to know as our responsibility, to advance democracy around the world, to help suffering people.
And how does Radio Free Europe make sure that, because this country is becoming more partisan and more partisan, how does Radio Free Europe make sure that they stay neutral and they are reporting the facts and not having one party who's in power trying to get their partisan views into news that is reporting into these countries?
Well, keep in mind, I understand the difference between Voice of America, which reports about what's going on in America to the world, and Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, which reports on what's going on in those people's countries to those people. So that's a little bit different. The focus is, here's what Ayatollah told you, but here's what we found out to be the truth. Now, still, your point is now that you understand that, we're really not reporting about America. We're really reporting about what's going on in that world. Still, your point is a good one because these are democracy advocates. These are people who've left their country and they are pushing. They are dissidents. They are pushing. So one of the things that we do, and I would do routinely, because I didn't speak all those languages, I would routinely translate that service, translate what they put out there that Thursday. I want to see it in English. Translate what they did in January. Translate, and once a year we come together for a full accounting of everything they've been broadcasting. Each service has to answer to what they have put out there. And if when we find that there's something that seems biased, we then deal with it. We call in the reporter, we call in the editors, we work through this. We dismiss the editors if they have really gone overboard and not have upheld those standards. So there is accountability at Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty for sure. And keep in mind, this is a bipartisan board that governs Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. The president, when I was there, was a Republican. The first president was Democrat. The second one, Jeff Gedman, was Republican. And the board is filled, I think it's half Republicans and half Democrats. So that is a check and balance on things.
So I'm sure you still have a lot of contacts at RFERL. And what is from what you've heard and from who you have talked to, what is the feeling right now in the organization with what's happening in the United States and with this administration?
Well, of course, first of all, there's disbelief. Remember, these are people who idolize the United States. I mean, the people who work for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty are people who are democracy advocates in places where they could die, where they're exposing their families to death. They were staunch supporters of the United States of America and democracy. So for them to suddenly see what is going on in the United States is almost unbelievable. So there is that sense of shock. What? What is going on here? A person I used to work with who was my counterpart, Nenad Page, who later became acting president of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, wrote an op-ed for me in which he lamented he could, again, this same sense of shock at what is happening in America, the country that we knew would always be a proponent and a staunch defender of human rights, of the rights of suffering people around the world, of democracy. So there's shock and there is anxiety, because here's the other thing. Many of these people have risked it all to become dissidents, and they've left their country, and if they have to go back, they could be killed, and likely many will be killed. Already Putin sends out people to assassinate people who work in the Russian service. There have been Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty people killed. A woman was stabbed leaving Radio Free Europe, going through that little tunnel area to the metro that you remember, set targeted assassination against her. These people are powerful in their own countries because the people know them there. They know their voices. They trust them. The governments, the despots hate them. So this would be giving a gift to despotism all over the world. There is no more Radio Free Europe. You will not learn the truth from anyone. That would be what happens. And that's the anxiety that many of them feel. They've risked it all. They thought they could depend on the United States of America, and they suddenly find they cannot.
Right, and that's sad. That's incredible. It's sad.
It's tragic.
It's tragic. It's scary.
Yes.
And I'm sure to our listening audience right now, we have quite a few people saying this is outrageous. This cannot stand. How can I help? As a Pennsylvanian, this show is actually international, but let's focus it to our state, probably the most important state in the electoral college too. How can I help stand with Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and Voice of America?
Well, the most obvious thing is you send an email, you pick up the phone and call U.S. Representative Scott Perry. You do the same with U.S. Senator Dave McCormick, and you do the same with U.S. Senator John Fetterman, and you let them know that this will not stand, that you consider this to be so important to America's legacy in the world that it could be a question of whether you vote, how you vote, and that if you don't hear them actively opposing this kind of thing, they won't have your vote. So that's one way. Short of that, I mean, and contacting the White House, I'm not sure what else can be done, because this is a decision that has been made, But as you pointed out, because Radio Free Europe, unlike Voice of America, because Radio Free Europe is actually a private entity, a private organization, they were held back, they were held in check. So what's going to need to be done now is make up those funds. So when you see there may be fundraising drives for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, or other countries, believe it or not, may come in and support it, because it's been such a vital tool, such a vital voice around the world for democracy, that other countries may come in and help. And that's a shame, picking up America's slack.
No, right, a real shame. And this defunding, here's a interesting question I wanted to pose to you. This defunding of Radio Free Europe, do you believe that it could that could have possibly been a bargaining chip that President Trump was using with Putin with the war in Ukraine? Because as you alluded to, and as we know, President Putin absolutely despises Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. So do you think that this could have been a concession that was offered? I know that's a loaded question. None of us are in the Situation Room, but when you've seen this, why do you think that this avenue was taken?
I think that's not a bad assessment. It is absolutely true that Putin hates what they call Radio Zvoboda, Radio Azadi. So that's what it's called in Russian. So they hate. We had at one point we had an office in Russia, in Moscow, and we had an office in Prague. They ended up closing down and forcing that to close, Putin did, in Moscow. But we still were able to operate and beam in broadcast from Prague. But it is now, it's been very hard to continue. But still, he hates it, and he would like it ended. He would like it shut. And frankly, he's tried to replicate many of the things that the United States has done around the world. He's tried to set up his own way of influencing. That's why he influenced our elections, because he knew we were sending information to influence other people's elections. So, but our was for democracy, to promote it. His is to stifle it. That's the difference. Right. But yes, it could have been, here's what we're willing to do if you go along with it. And it just didn't work. But you're right. I don't think he's going to give up. I think Trump may not give up this thing. And it's so silly, because this is such a powerful tool around the world, and he could still control it in many ways. Yeah. It could still be a voice for him in the world. Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm sure it doesn't make a lot of sense to our listeners. And off that point that you made, I want to pivot, and we're gonna go deeper into international relations right now. You spent a lot of time in the Middle East. You talked about how you met with Yasser Arafat when he was advocating for the Palestinian people. We probably, one of the issues that's causing the greatest divide in this country is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That, as spans generations way before us. What? How do I phrase this? We've seen what's happened up until now, and if you'd like to comment on that, the floor is yours. How do we move forward? How do we move forward? We're seeing elected officials like John Fetterman take one staunch side. We're seeing others take another staunch side. We're seeing others stay silent. And in the region, the conflict grows and grows and grows. So what do you believe is a path forward that could bring unity, peace, and resolution in the region?
Whoa! If I had that answer, Secretary of State, right? Or God, I don't know. But I'll tell you this. Yeah, I have been covering the Middle East and the Palestinian-Israeli conflict for several decades now. So I've seen a lot. There was one point when I thought we are right at the brink of peace between these two peoples, who, by the way, are cousins, right? They are of the same, if just go biblical, those who want to go biblical, you can see the same father, different mother. So, but bringing today, Israel, I believe, would be better served to begin brokering peace rather than continual war. I'm not even talking about what's good for the Palestinians. I'm talking about what's good for our friends, the Israelis. I would not want for my descendants to continue to fight a war and to live in the kind of misery that brings, the kind of insecurity. I would try to make peace so that next generations would not face what they faced on October 7th. That can happen again. It took a few people to move into a kibbutz and slaughter all those folks. And does Israel really want the heritage and legacy of genocide, of wiping out? Is that really what a moral nation like the Jewish nation is supposed to represent in the world? Do they really want that stain on their heritage, their history? So that's my essential question there. This, I do not believe, short of absolute genocide, and it would have to be a genocide not only of the Palestinians, but of a good many Arabs who would not sit back. Short of that, there is no way to solve this militarily. The Palestinian people have been living there. They remember where they lived, where their homes were. They, at one point there was an idea that there would be a two-state solution, a state for Palestinians and a state for Israelis. The reason there can't be one state, you understand why there can't be one state? Because in a democracy, right, the majority vote would win.
Yes.
And it would not be long before the majority vote would be Arab or Palestinian, and it would, right? There even is an issue we need to check into. The Israelis really don't have a constitution because it's kind of hard to write in a constitution, some of it's only for us, or it's only for this, or that's a struggle. But if you want a Jewish state, it's going to be hard to have just all Palestinians, because it just won't work. They will soon outnumber the Israelis. That's why people are saying the two-state solution is best. But it must be a two-state solution where Palestinians guarantee that the safety of Israelis, and Israelis guarantee the safety of Palestinians, or someone else has to come in to do that. Here's the problem. Palestinians have also insisted, not only on that, but many have insisted on the right of return. That right of return means Palestinians who are living all over the world believe they have a right to go back to where they were living. And before the initial war broke out in 1940, they have a right to go back and claim their land. Well, some of that land is now Israel. Some of that land is now in Haifa. I remember talking to a man who was a trainer of suicide bombers. That was the big deal when I was reporting. They would send suicide bombers into Israel and blow things up, blow themselves up and blow. What he told me, I said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you training? Why?" He said he showed me a deed and he showed me a picture, a crumpled up picture of an old man on a bed, a kind of cot. Around him were a bunch of children. This crumpled deed with the key. He showed this to me. He said, "Do you know what that is?" "That's my grandfather." I said, "That's your grandfather, the old man?" He says, "Yes." The deed is the deed to our house, which is now in Haifa, Israel, now being occupied by Jews. The key is the key to the door. I promised him I would not stop fighting until I put that key back in the door, and we went home. So there you have it. If Palestinians do not give up the right to return, it's going to be kind of hard for Israelis to say, yes, we can have a two-state solution. So there has to be an understanding that we now have to get rid of the past, forge what is going to be a workable peace now that will guarantee Palestinians and Israelis safety, security, and long-term, one would hope, prosperity. These are two brilliant people that should figure out a way to live in peace.
Yes, I could certainly agree with that. And I know we just said we gotta get rid of the past, but let me just ask about the past just a little bit. When you were interviewing Yasser Arafat, I'm going to ask you a two-parter if you could go into greater detail about it. When you were interviewing Yasser Arafat and you were talking to him about these issues, what are some of the main points? Because that's a huge, major international player on the world scene. What were some of the major points that he was telling you at that time? And then also, when you were going into these camps where people were being trained to be suicide bombers, to blow themselves up the next day for their cause, what were some of those interactions like, and what were some of the main things that many told you before they died?
Well, back to Yasser Arafat. Let's deal with him. He definitely was in favor of the right to return, but he impressed upon me that he was also a man of strong faith, he said. Devout Muslim, he said. He prayed his 3 times a day, and he said that that Jerusalem was a very holy city to Muslims, and that Al-Aqsa Mosque there was extraordinarily important to the Muslim world. They had to be able to have access and control over Al-Aqsa Mosque, which you haven't been to Jerusalem. We'll get you there, one would hope, one day, but the Al-Aqsa Mosque is very close, not that far from the Jewish Western Wall. That whole complex is the center of Jerusalem, and so they want to control that and to be allowed access, but that's right near the Jewish holy site. So right now, that's the problem. How would Muslims also, at one point Muslims wanted control of Jerusalem, all of it. Jews wanted control of all of it. It's split. There's still the Palestinians with the Eastern and the Jews with the Western. So that's the religious issue is a big one that would have to be dealt with. But it was the right return, it was the religious issue. It was, again, a homeland for Palestinians. Where are they going to be able to rule and govern themselves according to their own creeds? I think those were the main issues that he had at the time when I was speaking to him. He was quite powerful, but he also had a great deal of support from Arab leaders. He was being supported by Jordan. He was being supported by Mubarak in Egypt. He was being supported by the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia. And that support for the Palestinians, I'm not saying they still don't sympathize, but it's weakened. We see that Jordan now has a peace treaty with Israel. Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel. Saudi Arabia might have been headed toward one before October 7th. We were talking about, was Saudi Arabia going to be the next to create a peace treaty with Israel? That would have been a big deal. October 7th blew that out of the water. And that could have been the reason that these terrorists went in and did a horrible thing, this awful act, because they wanted to derail this next thing, which would be a game changer in the Middle East.
Yeah. And just would ask you, because I've always found it fascinating. You know what's interesting? This question, I've known you my whole life, and I've my whole 30 years, and I've never asked you this question of what was it like talking to people that you knew the next day would probably be dead, and what was their message to you, and you kind of, if you think about it, got their final words, and I know that you go into detail in that in your second book, Martyrs. What was that like for you emotionally, but also what were the things that they were trying to get across to you before they went and killed themselves for their cause?
Well, let me say, I'm not sure, although I could have spoken to someone who the next day went and killed themselves, but generally it wasn't that immediate. I knew I was talking to people who were prepared to die and who were prepared to be suicide bombers, yes. And I was able to see what an industry it had become in that part of the world. We live in a different world, but there, in places like the city of Jenin or Ramallah, it had become almost like, as I say, an industry, meaning you decide that, yes, you're going to go through the training to be a suicide bomber. There suddenly becomes, you get a flyer done on you, meaning your face, everything. You get your picture done because you're going to be promoted as a martyr, and you're a jihadist. You get to say your final words and what you want. Money will be probably given to your family. A check, not a check, but money, because they didn't have checks, but money would be given because you're a martyr to sustain your family. So there's a whole industry, and then there'll be a ceremony afterwards. Whether your body is there or not, there'll still be a ceremony. So there was that whole, thing around suicide bombers and martyrs. And that's why I titled my book Martyrs, because I knew in this part of the world, martyrdom was such a big deal that we had martyrdom in the Christian faith, and it has been a big deal. St. Joan of Arc was a martyr, right? So we have our martyrs, people who will be willing to die for, but it is still very pronounced there. And when I went to Tehran, one of the places I wanted to visit was the Martyrs Museum, because that was their shrine to people.
Oh, there's a whole museum.
There's a whole museum dedicated to the whole idea of martyrs. And so I went to this museum, and as soon as you step in the door, there's a long red carpet that stretches out before you. And they tell you, you're standing on the blood of the martyrs. So you walk down this long hallway on the blood of martyrs. And one of the martyrs that I focused on was a 13-year-old boy who, when there was a war between Iraq and Iran, horrible war, 8-year war, I believe. And when Iraq was sending tanks into Iran, this 13-year-old boy strapped grenades around his whole body, threw himself under the tank, and detonated it. That's what I wanted the world to understand, and wanted us to understand, is the level of passion, commitment, and martyrdom that we would confront when we go up against this world. It's not just get your little guns out and start. No, it is full tilt boogie war.
Yeah, and that's something I in my personal opinion, the United States has never really fully understood, because we feel that we can go into, especially this region, and be there for a few years, or in some cases we saw 15, 20 years, and that's going to fix all the problems. But as you just said, this is a jihad. Can you educate what jihad
jihad,
means?
it's important that we understand jihad is a term that means struggle in Arabic. and the al-jihad, the struggle, the war. But the jihad has two meanings. The first and most important meaning is the internal struggle that every person has between good and evil inside themselves. We all can be the best and we all can be the worst. We struggle to keep one over the other. We all that is the Islamic, and that I think that's true. Each one of us, each human being can be brutal, mean, and nasty and sinful. They also can be the most loving, peaceful. That struggle goes on. That's the jihad inside. The lesser jihad, as they call it, is the struggle that they feel against oppression, against the evils of this world. And unlike Christianity, which I believe is a little bit different from Islam, in that we are supposed to do good to those who oppress us, Muslims believe they have a duty to fight oppression. There's no joke there. You're oppressing, I have a duty to stop it. If you're causing suffering, I have a duty. And so, even now, as I think about what's being cooked up in that part of the world, if they believe our government now is oppressing, there are people who believe it is their duty to stop it. And so my fear is that we will see increasing terrorism against Americans abroad, overseas, just as we did when I was covering this. It was rampant, right? You never knew. And I think it's only going to increase, especially because we're seen to be allowing what many believe is this ongoing catastrophe in the massacring of all these people in Gaza and all. I mean, it's, it's, now, to be honest, this is why it's so complicated. Israel, when they're attacking people in Gaza, they say they're going after terrorist targets and they're going after Hamas. Here's the problem. Hamas in Gaza is everything. I went there. I interviewed them. Hamas, because there was no government, there was no Hamas. They have different wings of Hamas. There's a military wing, but there's also a social services wing. The social services wing does the hospitals. Their doctors are in the hospitals. They're doing the schools. So that is Hamas, but it's not the military Hamas. The military Hamas is out there fighting or doing these raids. But if Israel says, I'm going after Hamas, I want to crush Hamas, then it has to crush the doctors. It has to crush the teachers. Because that's all Hamas too, right?
Right, and that ideology is still embedded even in the non-militaristic side. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you're right. But keep in mind, when we talk, if you can try to open your mind outside of the Western perspective, not that many people want to do this, but I have had to do that. In their world, they see themselves as defending, as struggling to survive. They are on their babies are dying. They are seeing people blown up. They are fighting for their survival. That's how they see it. They don't see it as terrorism. They're seeing it as, how can we get to these people and stop them, right? We see it. No, these are horrible people who you should just, you should just cooperate or make peace. It's, we were close under Carter. We were close under, but I still don't know what happened that we retrenched and went back to war. We were so close to making peace. I remember Arafat was there and signed the Camp David Accords.
Yes, with Rubin, yeah.
So what happened that, I think I know what happened. The one thing that he felt he could not do was give up. He felt he couldn't give up Jerusalem. He felt at the time that if he made a peace that allowed Israelis, that didn't get Muslims control of at least all of Eastern Jerusalem, he himself might be killed by jihadists who insisted that they have rights. Islam should be in the Islamic holy place.
So even as a leader.
Yes, and he thought he might be killed, might be himself assassinated.
Wow. In the interest of time, we could go on about that all night, and sometimes we do at the dinner table, but in the interest of time, I just have one big topic I want to bring up with you, and then I want to give you an opportunity for a closing statement and just some final thoughts that you want to impart on the many listeners The Other Side of Information with Jeff Kennedy. So this is loaded too, Mom, but the state of the press. When I talk to many, especially young people, but all Americans, there is a concern that especially our national press, is becoming so partisan, so clickbaited, that where do I get unbiased news, reporting of the facts? Where do I get my news from? Now, one could argue, and I think is a good argument, that you should be listening to all sorts of news outlets and all well-rounded. But I guess my first question to you is, where would you advise for people who are yearning to get news that is just straight to the facts, and what journalism should be and at a point was?
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just make sure that we clarify the Camp David Accords were Begin, and that was Sadat and Begin, Anwar Sadat.
Oh, yes.
Oslo
Okay.
Accords, so Oslo Accords were the ones that Arafat participated in. Just so that's clear to people, you can go back and do the history. But where can you get law? In the morning, I use my Alexa Dot, and I have it set up, so it just went on there. I have it set up so that I get what's called my flash briefing. That flash briefing gives me at least tidbits from a variety of different news sources. So, I don't just get Penn Live, right? I also get a tidbit from CNN, what they see as the top things breaking today. I have Fox News. What does Fox News see as breaking today? I have CNBC. I have the Wall Street Journal, just so that I can hear BBC. I want to hear what people around the world are saying. Are they saying the same thing? Are they saying different things? Are some covering one thing and not covering another thing? The smart thing to do right now for anybody who wants to not be duped. If you want to be duped, go and be duped. Go to your source, go to one source, and be duped. Because you will be duped eventually by any one source. Because people make mistakes, even the best journalists make mistakes, the best newspapers may lose their way. Look at what's happening to the Washington Post. I'm real concerned about the Washington Post, which used to be, I interviewed one of the great journalists at the World Affairs Council's National Conference, who, helped to lead to Nixon getting out because they exposed the Watergate. I don't know that the Washington Post is doing that anymore. So, New York Times is a reliable newspaper. Wall Street Journal for the news, not necessarily the opinion, but read the opinion. The opinion is a little more right, far right sometimes, but you can still read it. Doesn't hurt you to know what people are saying, right? You don't have to agree with it. My concern is that people turn off and do not want to hear things that challenge their beliefs and their assumptions. Always be willing to have your beliefs challenged. And if you can't stand up and can't say, well, no, here's why I believe this, here's the logic behind it, then it might be wrong, right? It's unbelievable to me how many well-educated people are simply willing to accept that, okay, the stock market has now lost, how many? 3,000 points. People have lost maybe, let's say, 10% or more of their wealth. So let's say you had $1 million today, but you don't have last week, but you don't have $1 million today. It's now down because of the actions of one man that you are not questioning. Every economist that I have seen is saying tariffs lead to higher prices, and it's the cause of the stock market going down. These are real life savings for people. That's where people, when their retirement, if you were saving in a 501c3, Out of your paycheck, it's going $100 every month to this, so that by the time you're 80 or by the time you're 60, you will have $500,000 there to live off of. That is being eroded now by what he's doing. People don't understand this. It is significant, and that's why that hands-off rally didn't have young people like you out there, because you don't understand the 501c3, the 501k yet, right? But it was out there by people like me and older people, middle-aged people, who say, what is this guy doing? This is my nest egg for when I'm old. You can't do this. And that's what's happening. He's eroding. This is eroding the nest egg of people who've worked their whole lives for this.
Yeah.
They understand, and that's why they were out there by the thousands throughout the country. It's starting to hurt people, but it's just.
But wait, I'll just say, I did see young people out there, because this is our future. This is
true.
We are going to have to deal with the repercussions of this administration's actions for decades to come.
Yes. Unfortunately for you and for young Americans, I lived in an age, an era, where American meant you were moral. I mean, okay, we knew it wasn't always the case, but your reputation around the world was, that's a country based on the rule of law, where people have rights, equality, they're striving, their ideals. We have lost that.
But Mom, and now y'all listening are going to see what the dinner table's like. So that's hard for me to when you, as a black woman from down south, had to endure whites-only restrooms, whites-only sinks, restaurants, segregation, Jim Crow, the Klan. I guess my question to you is, when was that era of respect? Because and that's why this "Make America Great Again," many people ask, when was it great? Yeah. So what era would you be referencing?
No, your point is well made. America has never reached its ideal. In fact, it has always fallen short of it. Very true. In fact, you're not going to hear me say, unfortunately, our country was based on the most despicable thing in slavery. This country would not have reached any greatness had it not been for the suffering of black people in chains. That's how it quickly came to be a wealthy nation for some. But the point is, how did those children of slaves win any semblance of equality? And just a semblance. How did we do it? Through the laws and the ideals that this country said it was based on. The rule of law. We went to the courts to use the laws that they had said were in our favor. The reason that little girl could walk and desegregate those schools, because the laws supported that happening. So, Martin Luther King knew that you cannot have a country with laws that say every man is equal and then deny that equality because the man's skin is black. He argued that, and they won that. Had there not been these ideals that this country is founded on and these laws, we would not have made any progress. Unfortunately, yes, they've backslid, just like today. They've ignored the laws. But enough good Americans, enough people rose up, stood up, had a backbone, refused, and they were white people who did it, because the white people had the power. There were enough white people who were good and who were decent and who believed in the rule of law and who knew that if it happens to them, it could happen to me. Remember, this nation didn't only oppress black people. If you were a Jew, you didn't always have it so well here either. It was better. If you were Irish, there were signs that said no dogs and Irish. Italians. Talk to some of the older Italians. They'll tell you the Italians were, right?
Asian Americans with internment camps. Yep.
Asian Americans with internment camps. And then let's not talk about the Mexicans and all of that were.
Yep.
So, but what I'm saying is, the truth is, the ideals. It's hard to find a nation. France has great ideals too after their revolution, but the ideals of equality, of justice, of rule of law, the ideal that once said, no man is above the law, no president is above the law. That's why Nixon resigned, because he knew he would be held to account for ordering the break-in of the Watergate office of the Democratic Party. He knew. He had faith in that system that would hold him accountable. Unfortunately, the system now has said the president will not be held accountable. We got to correct that. Until we correct that, our whole democracy is in danger. No person, no female president, no male president, no trans president, no any president should be above the law. When they break the law, they should be held accountable.
Yep, absolutely. And I know we're about to come to a close, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about World Affairs Council of America and your organization you're the president of the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg. So for our listeners here that may want to learn about what a World Affairs Council is and how to support the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg, could you just go deeper into that, if you may?
Well, thank you for mentioning the World Affairs Councils of America. I am on the national board of the World Affairs Council of America, and it is a network of councils around the nation with the mission of helping Americans better understand just what we've been talking about here today, global affairs. However, there are councils like mine that also see our own backyards as part of the world. So we will, if something is happening in Harrisburg, it's okay for us to do a forum on it as well. We can get involved in local elections to let people know what the issues are there. So we consider ourselves local and global and everything in between. And we were founded in 2010, and right now we have a stellar board of directors made up of phenomenal academics and business people and social activists. They're all coming together. The other thing we do is we do have a vibrant youth network. You were a part of that. Summer internship program that's going to begin in May with high school and college students. They will have 8 weeks of intensive delving into, with conversations like this, the world as well as local, and you will be taking them to the state capitol and other places so that they can learn about that. And then we end with an International Young Leaders Conference and Career Fair in August. So we nurture the next generation of world leaders. But we also hold conferences and forums. We just held a women's conference in which we had an international women's fashion show, and it was a phenomenal event at Central Penn College. So that's what I do for the World Affairs Councils. And I will say the one thing that I think your viewers need to know is I was also a fellow where I wrote it was my first book, at the United States Institute of Peace. And the United States Institute of Peace really has been doing stellar work behind the scenes to try to prevent wars, to try to solve conflicts around the world. That agency is very much in danger. Well, it's been taken over. They fired Ambassador Moose, African-American ambassador, who was the president of the U.S. Institute of Peace's board of directors. They've taken the building over. They've defaced, scraped out names of people on the building. And what's so sad about that is I was a part of the original group with Ambassador Dick Solomon, who was a Republican, and who it was his vision to have that beautiful building there on the mall in Washington, the building of the United States Institute of Peace. I don't know if anyone's ever been to it, but it is a glass building, the top of which looks like white wings of a dove of peace. And it's just glass. When you're in it, the light in it is just so beautiful, but it was his vision. This was a Republican ambassador I remember hearing him. I was the communications director for the U.S. Institute of Peace at the time, and I was working as a fellow. And I remember him offering this vision of this building, and he would begin the what it took to raise the money for it. And I thought, that ain't happening. Never they're going to be able to do that. And it did happen. He did find a way. But what was smart also, he also made it a separate organization. It's funded by Congress, but really, I think they're going to win the lawsuit to take that back, because just like Radio Free Europe, they are not owned by the government. They are separate entities. So I'm hoping that they are able to survive as well.
I hope so too, because they do very important work, and
They
they
definitely
need to be supported. And and in closing, because I know you're busy, but in closing, I am an American, but if I'm a Pennsylvanian, someone living in another state, and I am very afraid of what is happening right now, and I am losing hope. You have lived and gone to regions that I'm sure people have felt hopeless. I'm sure there have been times where you've lived in this country, maybe not as much as now, but where you've been like, things are never going to change. Like these can't change. What would you say to someone who is like, this is a feeble situation, and how can we encourage our fellow man and woman to continue to go out, continue to protest, continue to rise up? And if there's anything you'd also like to say in closing to our viewers here on the other side of information, the floor is yours, Dr. Davis.
Well, I will say this, that I am not giving up hope. And I have great hope, especially after seeing on Saturday the turnout of people. And these are normal people. There were people that were on motorized scooters because they couldn't walk, right? There were people in wheelchairs. There was someone with an oxygen tank who came. That tells you this has struck a nerve. These are not, I was trying, because I'm going to write this, I was trying to help you understand that with the Black Lives Matter movement, that's a valid movement. That was good. But those were young people out there leading the charge, saying, no, we don't believe, right? You had a few, I was out there, but it was really a young people's protest. This is an older people's protest, from what I can see. And it's a real people, not that you're not real people. These are people who are everyday Pennsylvanians, right? They are not rabble-rousers. They wouldn't be out there if it didn't really matter, hurt them in some real way. It's touching their lives. So that gives me hope. We have no hope if it's not hurting anyone. If it's just black people being hurt, it's going to be a long struggle, because nobody's going to. But when it's reaching everywhere, and people are worried about Social Security, when the stock market has gone down, when they're worried about Medicaid, and it's not just Democrats who are on Medicaid, it's Republican poor people who are on Medicaid. Healthcare, all of that stuff, those are real issues. And I don't think people are going to be put off for long by saying, don't worry how much you're suffering today, it's going to get better tomorrow, right?
Right.
Why didn't they accept that with Biden, right? But now they're really feeling the pain. That is what gives me hope. The other thing that gives me hope is, as I say, this country is based on laws. And many times there are corrupt people, corrupt officials that don't follow the laws, that skirt the laws. We know that locally as well as nationally. But overall, through the course of history, or even as Martin Luther King says, the arc of justice, right? The arc of goes toward justice. It may be slow. But it tends toward justice, right? I do believe we're going to come through this. What led to this is our taking democracy for granted. All of those people thinking they don't need to vote, other people are voting, I don't care. You must be engaged with democracy like you from a young age. You've taken your blows. You've been out there trying to be a force for good. You've been out there knocked around by people who didn't want forces for good. You're still standing. You're not going to give up. Nobody should give up. You come up. You resilience. They may knock you down, but stand for what is right. Keep getting up. Keep fighting. The only way I will give up hope is I see nobody fighting. Everybody just takes it. Look, even in the Czech Republic where we lived, we knew those people went through hell. They went through decades of communist rule where it was so horrible they couldn't get shoes for their kids. They had to sneak. They couldn't trust people in their families who were turning them in. But they got out of it. It took a while. But they got out of it, and they're now a free nation. The problem is we haven't lost yet, but we're very close to experiencing what places like the Czech Republic experience if we don't stop it now. But I see people ready to stop it now. What we got to do is get these elected officials to get a spine, to get some courage, to stand up, to be smart. I'm not saying go out there and smart, shrewd. Figure out how you're going to save this nation and save our democracy. And ordinary people out there, remember, you can't take democracy for granted. You cannot sit back on a Tuesday when people are going out to vote and watch television or what. I mean, you can't do that. And you need to know who the candidates are. You really need to misinformation. People lie on candidates. People find out for yourself. Get to know the people. No candidate is perfect, but you need to know what they stand for. You need to know if they're people of integrity that try to be people of integrity, and you need to vote your conscience. Don't put people in office who are telling you they're going to exact revenge on people. Don't do that. No, that's not the character I want. I want a character who's going to be fair, who's going to work for justice, and that's not going to be everybody. And sometimes you're going to have to take the lesser of two evils, but you're going to have to step up and get engaged in this democracy if you're going to keep it. We thought America would always be a democracy. It may not always be.
That is powerful stuff, Mom. And you got me a little flicker of hope within me, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate you.
Remember the one message: never give up. Smart. One of the things, even in the South, I remember my grandmother would, if you have to smile and say yes, sir, but you have another day where you fight, that's what you do. You don't go up on their face and then get knocked down. No. Just do whatever you say, sir, and move on to fight another day in another way that will be effective. You must be smart. You must use the laws of this nation, right? You must have confidence that the majority of American people are good and decent people.
But
and
when
they will not tolerate dictatorship.
But when see, you bringing up stuff that's gonna keep the conversation going, Mom. When the system itself is systemically racist, and built on racism, how and we're seeing that the laws, especially with this current administration, they've been bent, but not completely broken. How does one trust going through a system that is inherently against them, especially people of color?
You got to keep working to right the system. And I will say this: as much as we just went through a phase, and history will look back at the phase, the Black Lives Matter movement phase and the DEI phase, as another notch up. Because a lot of people learned things about American history that they didn't know. Even I didn't know about Tulsa. I'm a black woman. I didn't know about Tulsa, and that whole community had been bombed, and people got away with killing wealthy black people. Really? A lot of people now are woke. Let's put it that way. They have awakened a lot more than were before. I think history is going to show this was another move forward. We have a setback right now, but once we're through this, it's going to catapult to a whole new phase. Because people are going to learn you cannot ever let someone who says, I'm a dictator from day one, step into office.
Right. No, I completely agree. And I want to give you your flowers, because sometimes you don't get it. But for everything you from going over to the Middle East, making sure Americans got the other side of perspective, to your work with Radio Free Europe. I've seen it up close. I know the work you do, and you are appreciated, and you're appreciated by many in our community and in our state. So I really appreciate you coming on, Mom. Love you, Mom. And I really appreciate everything that you continue to do for our community. We really do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sons don't always tell that to their mothers, but I will say this. The hope I have is you. I know how you've been raised. I know you've been raised to be a man of integrity and of service. And I know you are the hope of this nation. You and people like you, young people, have to band together. And yes, there will be people who will scandalize your name, who will slander you, who will attack you. That is what happens, unfortunately, in politics. We need to get politics back to a place where that doesn't happen. But just know that no person who ever was great and who ever went after anything didn't meet resistance. We can start with Jesus Christ. We can move on down to Martin Luther King, and we can go to Nelson Mandela. No great person ever just had an easy flow ride forward. People tried to stop them. Don't let them win. Thank you. Adios.
Thank you, Bob. A great conversation, and we'll definitely have you back here on the other side of information with Jeff Kennedy. Thank you, Mom.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Well, if only she had some energy.
I know, right? And we are still live on air, correct?
Absolutely, sir.
Wonderful. I just want to say that is what this show that you have created and given a platform is all about. Having the tough conversations about tough subjects, about subjects that we don't really think about. I'm gonna tell the listeners right now that this interview really touched me a little bit, because I knew I learned things about my mom that I never knew, and that perspectives that she went through that I was not aware of even. So I really hope that everyone listening could take away something from the conversation, because that was a good one, and she will definitely be back.
Well, I'm going to ask her to come back and get interviewed by somebody professional. I'm kidding. I'm completely kidding. I'm completely busting your chops.
Without the bias of having to get yelled at later.
She gives you all the good stuff because you're related and you get to play with that. But yeah. But look, you can't. If you're the billionaire class, you can't, on the one hand, try to convince us that we are all one big global community and global market, ripe for unrestricted free trade, and that no longer just when billionaires in this country do well, you do well, but when billionaires overseas do well, you do well, and when entire nations and their ruling families, very medieval style, are worth more money than can be calculated accurately, i.e. throughout the Middle East, and Putin himself his wealth can no longer be, it can be estimated, but if anybody said it was in the trillions, I don't think anybody would be shocked. And then at the same time, try to subdivide us and cut us all off from each other. And a same sort of billionaire class in this country that said we don't need international trade. We don't need people from different nations and different backgrounds and different heritages here to work, unless they're willing to work cheap. We don't need that either. I think sometimes, even on the left, we don't understand the dichotomy that's being put in front of us, and how very, very little it makes sense. That we want immigrants to come in because we want cheap labor and we want to bust unions, but oh, by the way, you should be scared of that immigrant.
Yeah.
Well, which is it?
Yeah. Well,
right?
Well,
which is it?
Be scared of that immigrant unless they're coming here to put food on your table for
right.
pennies on the dollar.
And I had mentioned to Bettina in the chat as you and the doctor were speaking. She had mentioned the rise of right wing in Europe, in Germany specifically. She actually outlined Germany specifically, and Bettina's correct. Right wing did the AFB, who did received a lot of money from Musk. It is a direct descendant, if you will, of the Nazi Party, and they did very well in the German elections. They did shockingly well. They do not have a majority, but they do have seats in Parliament. This right-wingism is not just here in the United States. The Russians have interfered in elections in Mexico, in Canada, throughout Western Europe. They sponsored the Brexit vote almost exclusively. And think about Poland, which I think is a very interesting example. Poland had turned toward the right, and they were moving right with rockets. I mean, they couldn't move right fast enough until the Russians invaded Ukraine.
Yep.
Then suddenly oh, by the way, don't forget everybody, we're NATO members.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And you saw the president of Poland, whose name is absolutely escaping me at the moment, make emergency trips to London, Paris, Rome, and by the way, it's a right-wing government you have in Italy as well. Prime Minister Mrs. Meloni she's a fascist. She's running under a party that is a direct descendant of Mussolini himself. Mm-hmm. And so Bettina's not wrong, but there are these little, it is funny how these, not funny, but it's how these things pop up that make you redirect and make you think, oh, hey now, well, that fascism looked pretty good until 40 million Russian troops might be on my border.
And until it was, oh, we're effing next. And that's what people truly don't understand about Putin. This isn't just about Ukraine. If he were to conquer all Ukraine, all of Eastern Europe is next, because this is a man that wants to restore the former Soviet Union. Czech Republic, you're next. Poland, you're next.
Medvedev has already said that the Baltics would be next, which would be Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. They would be next. And the important thing to remember, as most of you out there know, you've listened and watched the program enough in 6 years to know, they're NATO countries. They're Article 5 countries. And by the way, there are 37 members of NATO. If Trump decides to sit in his hands and sit this one out because Putin orders him to do so, which he will, there's still 35 other countries to respond, including some exceptionally well-armed countries, such as Finland and Sweden, mm-hmm. and the UK.
And countries that will respond.
And they will respond out of desperation, because Europe understands. I'm not the biggest Emmanuel Macron fan on the planet, but he knows bloody well how the chips are moving on the European continent. He knows the Russians take Warsaw. It puts them less than 1,000 miles from Paris.
Yeah.
So, and then if you are some of the countries that you mentioned, if you're Greece, if you're Italy, Austria, Germany, Romania, Hungary, you're basically in the Eastern Bloc anyway. That's already you've cast your lot on that side of the fence anyway. Right. But these are not small things. There's been a lot of talk since the inauguration about flooding the field, of just throwing so much crap at you every single day that you cannot deal with all of it. This is part of it too. Simply because with all the illegal things that are happening here, these things are still happening all around the world. But on the flip side of that, these, what's the proper way to say it? 50-51? Is that how we say it? Or is it 50-501? How do we say that one? 50501, 50 states, 50 something one movement, and something like, I forget exactly how you're supposed to pronounce it. But
I've been saying 50-51. But
is it? Yeah, okay, I've heard that too, to be honest.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but these protests took place all over the planet. They didn't just take place in all 50 states and every American territory this weekend. They took place all over the planet. There were tens of thousands of people in Paris, in London, and throughout all the Western European capitals and large cities to stand up and say that this billionaire agenda, this billionaire takeover, this sponsored return to the Middle Ages is not going to be taken. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. And now, being the glass half empty guy that I generally seem to be, I do wonder, where the bloody hell were all of you at Election Day? For the millions of people who went out there and marched yesterday, and thank you for doing it. Where were you on Election Day? I suspect the majority of you voted, but some of you didn't. Some of you didn't.
And I also suspect that majority voted. The question is, I know this for a fact, some of them voted for this dictator.
Yes.
And because now it is personally,
I think with the idea that that's not really going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
Yeah,
and it can
because
happen.
It is.
And it can happen because, as a conversation with Dr. Davis, there are countries all around the world where this very thing has and is happening, but this idea of no, this can never happen in America. We'll never let it. Yes,
yeah, exactly.
And it started.
Yeah, exactly. And let me ask you, or do you need to go? Do you have to go? Did you end because you had to go, or because she had to go?
I have about 10 more minutes, and
all right, no worries. I'll try to get you to 8 o'clock, folks, with what's left of this voice. I'll try to give you a quickie update as well. Try to give you a quickie update on what the hell's happening on this end as well. Let me ask you, because you're a much more optimistic person than I. When you see these videos, regardless of where they might be, if it's YouTube or TikTok or whatever, it's irrelevant, really, as to where it comes from. And you see these farmers in the Midwest, or especially poor white, hopefully working class, some of them are not even working, throughout the Confederacy. And I refuse to call it any different until they stop fighting. He just shut down I went down to my Social Security office and it's closed. Or there used to be 10 people working, now there's 2. Or the folks in what was it, 8 or 9 different cities across the country that went to the local office of the Department of Education and it was closed.
Yeah.
Or the veterans. Exit polling shows that 60% of the veterans voted for Trump, who went to the closest VA to either see it closed or have their appointments canceled on their behalf because there's no staffing. How do you? Because I have a terrible time with this. I'm to be very, very honest. I have a terrible time with this. I tend to look at some of them and go, "Good for you. It's exactly what you voted for." Sometimes you get exactly the government you voted for, and sometimes you get exactly the government you deserve. You're a better man than me. How do you not do that to people? Or just some people just only learn through pain and failure.
That's very true. I see a lot of posts from people who did make the mistake again in voting for this man, saying, "I'm sorry. What I am now looking for going forward, because we can't change the past. I mean, that is just, we can, there's nothing we can do about the past. But going forward, sorry means making a change. And if that change has to have come, it shouldn't have, because we should have learned our lesson when that man was going down the escalator. Should have learned our lesson when that man was putting out newspaper ads trying to put black men in jail for a rape that they didn't do. Should have learned our lesson.
Trying to have them put to death, by the way, for a rape they didn't do.
Put to death. We should have learned our lesson when this man was making fun of disabled reporters.
Let me ask you the same question in another way, because I know you have to go. I know I'm probably it's kind of the same question, but I'm trying to come at it from a different side here. You know, Democrats have taken a lot of crap because we don't know how to message to anyone. I'm wondering if it's that we don't know how to message to someone or to specific groups, or if we've completely lost the plot, which I actually think is incorrect. Have we lost the ability to message, or do we simply not know how to deal with 30% of the population who's willing to quite literally burn the Constitution just because he hates the same people I hate?
Yeah.
See, for me, I know how I want to talk to those people. I know how I do talk to those people. But I don't know that that's the Democratic Party's fault when you're trying to talk to them about providing a decent education for their children, and they're saying, I want a dictator and I want the federal government shut down. There's a lot of effing space between those two poles. I don't know how you even speak to some of that. So is it... look, the party, you and I know, the party has a lot of problems. It's got a lot of problems and a lot of faults. But, is it so far that is it that we don't know how to talk to them, or is it that we don't even know where to start when they're starting from that position?
I have two answers to that. The first one is, yes, we do not know, and we shouldn't have to know, how to talk to voters who completely disregard the values and tenets of this country.
That's the thing there.
We are going to have to defeat those type of people every single election for the rest of our lives. That is a fact. But there's a second answer I'd like to give. It is not that the Democratic Party is bad at messaging, in my opinion. It's that the Democratic Party many times doesn't know and doesn't choose to be democratic. When we have primaries, we win because the people choose the message that they want going into the general election. But when we have presidents trying to play God and wipe fields of primary candidates, like this last election, there was no primary. Now, one could argue that President Biden he decided to drop out too late, so she was the only viable option. That's an opinion. But even a brokered or contested convention would have showed the nation that the Democratic Party can be democratic. And we have lost this past election. I believe we lost that trust with many people. Oh wait, we had a primary, we won. 2016, we had a primary that was very controversial and people felt was cheated.
And we continues lost. To be litigated within our own circles these days. Yeah, to this day. To this day.
Litigated to this day. We had a 2020 primary that I would say 95% of it was done correctly until you had President Obama come in and wipe the entire field and Joe Biden came through. But people felt that they had a say. But when the Democratic Party and the party elites and our party leaderships X that say, it's not about messaging, it's about trust. And we lose that trust within our own tent of people feeling that they have a say in what messaging they want to go forward and what we can have. So that would be my opinion, and that is a whole nother show that we can talk about that for sure. For sure.
All right, I know you have to go, and I can't sit here for much longer either. Funny how much I thought I was feeling better until I had to try to sit in this chair for 3 hours. Which I think actually speaks to this chair as much as anything else.
No,
if you've paid attention to the program at all, you know that George has been beating my head about getting a gaming chair, which is supposed to be much more comfortable for things like this. I need to continue to thank you for trying to, not just trying, but very ably and passionately trying to guide the ship here until I can get back. I think, I don't know, why don't you and I try this Tuesday? We'll see how it goes on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we'll see what to do next Sunday. Because I think I could sit here for an hour, but my goodness, am I uncomfortable right now. As you can tell, folks, my voice is not returned yet. Actually beginning to worry about when it might. Maybe I sound a little older, maybe I sound a little wiser, maybe I sound a little more grizzled. I'm not sure, but recovery continues. Tuesday will be... What will it be? Tuesday will be what? Oh, blimey. Oh, really? Only 2 weeks from surgery, believe it or not. Gosh, I thought it was longer than that. But it's time to get back on the horse here. I got to do something with myself. I'm starting to get bored and restless. That doesn't mean that I'm very good at this anymore, but I'm beginning to get very bored and restless. And I need to say on the air, to you especially, what an amazing friend and dare I say family that you have turned out to be, which sounds worse than I mean it, but you've taken on a lot to try to cover all this for me, and I know it hasn't been easy with job and family and significant other responsibilities, but please know how grateful I am that you've been trying to fly the ship, and let's see if we can do this together this week and see how I fare, and then it's time for you to start flying your own plane, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you asking me. I appreciate the team here for helping as well. Really, I couldn't have even gotten the few shows that I got off the ground without them. So I'm really excited. We'll disagree when we disagree, but I'm going to tell you when you're right. The bug was caught. For sure. It was.
Oh, no way! How did I know that was going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh, no way!
It was.
Oh, no way! I can't. Never would have guessed that would have.
So I'm here. My upcoming show, I will block out a time. I will be on every week, and we continue the fight together and moving forward.
Well, I know that you coach during the week, so let's meet back here Tuesday at 8, and then we'll pilot this thing until you have to go start kicking footballs, and then we'll fly from there. Interestingly,
and look, I'm just really glad that you are in better shape currently than Manchester United. So that is, I can say that.
Can I tell you, they were into the second half of a Manchester derby before I even remembered they were playing. And I didn't watch a single bloody second of it. Like, literally not a second of it. I looked on the ESPN app after it was over and like, oh, scoreless draw. Okay, good. 2 hours of my life I didn't give away to United yet again. And, boy. But you know what, though? You'll understand this. God, I miss football. Like, I miss football.
Yeah.
Because I've got nothing to watch. Now, other folks would say, well, just watch a Champions League and whatnot. I can't watch things that I'm not vested in the same way. I can't. And, I have a modicum of interest in Spurs, the whole world's second favorite club. I guess unless you're a Spurs fan. But it's when you're not, like, blood invested in it, it's just... Yeah, all right. I could watch. I actually get a great deal of joy watching Nottingham Forest. I think they play great football. But
yeah, I think so too. But
if they're playing Everton on a random Tuesday, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. It's on.
I know. Yeah, and it's just that I'm just going to take shots when I can. It's hard for me to empathize with that, being a Real Madrid fan, because we are always in rare air.
Correct.
Let me just say this, and then I'm gonna let you go. Manchester United, from the times of Park Ji-sung, from the times of Paul Scholes, from the times of Ryan Giggs, Michael Carrick, David Beckham, Michael Owen, Fabian Barthez as keep, our own American,
dreadful,
Tim Howard, who had a little stint there. I am rooting for you guys to get back to being the club with rich history, because your history is so rich. And even though I poke fun at you, my second favorite club is Manchester United.
World football is not terribly different from U.S. domestic professional leagues. Major League Baseball is better when the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Red Sox are good. It just is. The NFL is better when the Giants and the Cowboys, and the 49ers and the Pittsburgh Steelers are good. And I can go through all the leagues. I mean, I've lost almost all my interest in the NFL now because the Giants are so absolutely shockingly dreadful. But it is better when the big clubs are good. It is better. It is easy, I would say, sir, my friend, my brother, to be a Real Madrid fan. Let's just be honest. A bad year is maybe third in La Liga and the semi-finals of the fucking Champions League. And that's a bad year. Are you kidding?
Let me just respond to that. You are looking at a Real Madrid fan since the times of Raul, since the time of Zizou, since the times of Casillas. So now we have a lot of bandwagoners post Ronaldo and during Ronaldo.
Which is partly why they bought him.
Yes. But it is a little bit easier because the EPL, that is the most competitive league in the world. I don't care what anyone says.
And by a long way.
Yes.
And by a long way. I mean, you're still looking at probably 8 clubs fighting for the 4 Champions League spots, and ironically, United continues to progress through the Europa League. If they should win it, they get a Champions League spot. So you could have this shell of a club that's probably going to finish well, I think they're sitting 13th right now.
13th, yeah. Yep.
That could finish as low as 15th in the Premier League, qualify for the Champions League. Do you know, real quick, before you go, do you know, as I understand it, because I happened to be at the match when it happened, how Tim Howard came to play for United? Did you ever hear that?
I could be wrong. My understanding was he... You know what? You tell me. I want it from a United fan.
The United was on a summer preseason tour. And they played the Metro Stars. Remember the old Metro Stars that used to play at Giant Stadium?
Yeah,
Mike Tim Howard was there.
Yeah.
And Tim Howard was a goalkeeper. And after the match was over, Sir Alex went into the Metro Stars locker room and said, "Your keeper, I'll have him."
Yes.
And they're like, "Well, I'm sorry, sir." They go, "Yeah, your keeper. He's leaving with me." And they're like, we don't know what you mean. He goes, "I'm buying him. So tell me what you want for him." And MLS is a single entity ownership. There are individual club owners, but they become part of this larger sort of corporation. So there's a lot of cooperative revenue sharing and TV sharing and all that. So when a club wants to buy a player from MLS, the league has to make that decision, not the actual club. Or I should say the individual club. And they said, "You can't do that, sir. You have to talk to the league office." He goes, "I don't care who I have to talk to. He's leaving with me." Well, 3 days later, something like that, United were playing at Giant Stadium again. This time they were playing a preseason against Inter Milan, and Tim Howard was in goal. And he flew that night and left and moved to Manchester. He bought him. Just a
great goalie, and we need to have a separate show on the state of the U.S. national team.
Well, look, there's a lot of empty air. I shouldn't say empty, that's the wrong word. There's still a lot of hours at gcpr.live that are not live. I am so down to do a football show, it's not even funny. Especially with the 2026 World Cup coming up. Here. Right here, with matches being hosted in Philadelphia, and of course, at the Grey Goliath MetLife Stadium in New Jersey.
Let's talk about that for sure.
We should do that.
Oh, man.
But I do, again, just before you duck out, because I'm leaving at 8 too, I deeply, deeply appreciate you flying the ship for me while I've been out. And I'm so glad that you finally, you know what, I'm going to say it. It sounds mean, but I'm going to say it anyway. Finally figured out, I need to do this. I should be doing this. It's exactly what I was hoping was going to happen. I'm glad that it did, and I'm hoping that it's created some urgency, and that we got to find your time slot and let you get your own self underway here, and then you and I will work on a football show.
100%. No, honor to even sit in your seat temporarily. It really is, because you are family to me. And that's why I told my mom immediately of what you told me at the beginning of the show, because I always keep my family updated. So I really appreciate you asking me, and onward together, for sure.
Well, thank you. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm going to say goodnight to the folks, and we'll see you Tuesday. Let's try this Tuesday.
Yep, give me a call tomorrow if you're free.
You got it, sir.
Bye, everybody.
That's Cole Goodman. He's been kind enough, and that's not a stretch, folks. He's been kind enough to be the guest host of the program while I have been out. As you can hear, my voice is not recovered. I am still very tired. I'm not eating right. Barely eating at all. The doctor said that would be the last thing that would come back to me, would be my appetite. But we're getting better, and I can't wait to return to you, and I think I'm going to try Tuesday. I think I can do an hour here, just sitting on this side of the program, trying to do the technical side of things while Cole hosts it. It's tiring, and I'm trying to we're trying to keep it going. To all of you who have reached out through back channels, whether it's Facebook or Messenger, or comments on different articles that we continue to post, who have reached out to say hello or to ask how we are, thank you. I mean, you have enough to worry about in your lives. You don't need to worry about me. But please don't take that as me being dismissive of your kindness. I'm not in any way, shape, or form. I would just say it's a rough world out there right now. You take care of you. We'll be okay. We'll get through this. But you asking alone means everything. It truly does. It means an awful, awful lot. It really does. To those of you who have been tuning in to Cole for the 2+ weeks that we've been gone, thank you. That's very kind of you as well. It's very kind of you that the program matters that much, that you've stayed with us. I know that some of you had mentioned, and I knew it was happening on this end. We were having technical problems. That's not a shock. As I mentioned to Bettina in the chat, I don't even know what is happening here. As I mentioned to Bettina in the chat, it wouldn't be the Kennedy effect if we didn't have some kind of problems. It wouldn't be our show if we didn't have some kind of damn technical problem. I'm going to close out some programs and clear the memory of the computer and just shut everything down again tonight. Hopefully by Tuesday everything will work again. The only good thing about being home recovering from the surgery is I've got an awful lot of time to sit here and try and get everything fixed. I'm sure George doesn't want to hear that. In fact, I know George doesn't want to hear that, but he's going to get drafted again. Because, why not? Why not beat the hell out of George when I'm available? Oh, God. Let me just quickly say as we wrap up, the usual. You have been watching and listening to The Kennedy Effect live with you for the 6th of April, 2025. We are live on the Facebook pages of Ghost Club Productions, Our Revolution, Pennsylvania, the TCP Media Group, hot101.net as well. We're live at our home group Facebook page for all things that surround the program, That Other Side of Information. We are live on 2 YouTube channels. The YouTube channel of Ghost Claw Productions Radio, of course, and That Other Side of Information, which is our YouTube channel. The audio of the program streaming around the globe via www.gcpr.live. The radio portion that was supposed to be going over Hot 101 was failing for some reason, and only silence was going out. My apologies to the family at Hot 101. The big boss was texting me saying, you gotta close it, and he was 100% correct. It's exactly what I needed to do. So I don't know what went wrong there, but my apologies to my hot101.net family. We continue to broadcast on their Facebook page and the Facebook group at hot101.net. The music has already returned to hot101.net, the radio version, of course. As soon as I clicked off, that happened. Following us on gcpr.live. Wow. On gcpr.live is The Villain's View. Pre-game, so to speak. Starts from about usually about 8:30. It's about a half hour from now, and then the show kicks into full throttle from 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Conversations with T. Nathan returns, of course, from 11 p.m. Eastern, and Thomas starts off your broadcast work week tomorrow morning from 8 a.m. on the sound of coffee, all of which is here on GCPR.live. Cole, you heard me bothering him, poking at him a little bit in a fun, I mean completely fun way, but he's coming to GCPR. He's a man that's got a lot to say, and that might sound like some sort of insult almost, but he's got good things to say. It's things that you need to hear, things that I think you'll enjoy. I don't believe he has a name for his show yet, but I'm sure that will come, and we'll get a time worked out, and it'll all get taken care of when he's going to become part of the program, or part of the network. I just missed a garbage can that's not even a foot away from me. That's not good. Maybe I'm not as well as I thought I was. Anyway, so please keep an eye out for Cole. Support him when you see him. He is becoming part of the GCPR.live family. His show will get an airtime, and we'll get a title for it and all that pretty soon. I think that's probably about it for us for tonight. Yeah, I think that's plenty. I think you've suffered enough. I have missed you. Please remember, and I think I've explained this quite a number of times before, it's why I run this program like an old-fashioned, quote-unquote old-fashioned, terrestrial radio program. Please know that I've been I love radio. Well, I just do. I love it. And I have missed you. I have missed doing the program. I have had these running dialogues in my head, which probably doesn't sound very good, come to think of it, but things that I wish I could talk with you about while I was lying in a hospital bed, and while I was downstairs in my own house in so much pain I could barely stand it. And to be fair, a little doped up to try to take that pain away. And it just, I've missed you. The loyalty to the program means so much. The fact that viewership tonight was about the same as it would have been if I had been here and nothing had ever been wrong, and I owe that all to you all. And I deeply, deeply appreciate it. I mean, it truly means a lot. And just thank you. And I'll give you further updates as it comes, or as they come. So why don't I just say goodnight for now? Here's the plan. Someone will be with you here on Tuesday night from 8 p.m. It could be me, could be Cole. I hope George will be there one way or another. Could be all three of us. I suspect Thursday will be the same. And then I can't exactly yet tell you what's going to happen for Sunday. Sunday's Palm Sunday. We do not generally take Palm Sunday off as a rule. We always take Easter Sunday off. We don't generally take Palm Sunday off as a course of business. But that's the plan. So for those of you at the hot101.net Facebook page and group, I know the radio portion we had to turn off. For everybody at GCPR, that's the plan for us here at TKE tonight, is to be with you on Tuesday. And as I said, it could be Cole, could be George, could be me, could be any combination of those three. And that will probably go for Thursday as well. And Sunday, I don't... Let me flip my mythical coin and see what's going to happen. Yeah, I have no idea. It is uncomfortable sitting here. And I think that about does it for now. Please stay informed. If you don't watch the news, then I don't know what it is that you need to do to stay informed from a news point of view. But now more than ever, we live in extraordinary times. We are coming to an end of an 80-year cycle that we have repeated in this country 1, 2, 3 times. Nearly 4. World War I was actually a bit of an aberration, believe it or not. This economic calamity, war, massive progressive reformation, and from the instant that that progressive reformation takes place, the rich, the gentry, the lords, immediately trying to claw it all back because they don't think their money is community money. And that's where we are again. That's where we are again. We're just about 80 years out from World War II. In fact, 40, 50, actually we're right at the end of the 80-year cycle. I don't know why I can't do that math in my head. We had the first Republican Great Depression. We had the New Deal, massive progressive reformation, followed by war. And from the instant the New Deal was instituted, the Republican Party and rich in this country tried to claw it all back. And they have. And here we are, at the verge again, a second Gilded Age, at the doorstep of a second Republican Great Depression. Genuine possibilities for world war. Not just Russia and Ukraine, but global conflict. Because remember, Trump's teased, I think he does it primarily for the headlines, but he's teased the use of troops in the Panama Canal and on Greenland. And we also have a very large military base already on Greenland. Because, where don't we have a military base? We're at the end of that 80-year cycle. So we're at the doorstep of the next great economic calamity and war. I hope I live to see the next progressive reformation. I'm not counting on it, but I hope that I do. I hope I make it long enough to see this nation restored to where the framers intended it to be, and where so many other patriots after that intended it to be. That we continue to seek a more perfect union, because goodness knows we have not been one yet. Let me just say real quick from the chat, Bettina says she's a football fan. She is from Germany. Eintracht Frankfurt. Well, at least it's not Munich, isn't it? Thank goodness for that. At least it's not Munich. It's easy to root for Bayern Munich, isn't it? And grandson is playing for Borussia Dortmund. Get out. Really? Boy, that's not nothing, Bettina. Dortmund's a wonderful club. Boy, how many players have United bought from Dortmund and just destroyed them? God almighty. I think, Cole mentioned Park Ji-sung. I think he came from Dortmund, if I'm not mistaken. Jadon Sancho ruined him. God, there was somebody else I've forgotten. Anyway, Bettina also says to stay strong and rest. I'm trying to get off of all the meds to help me sleep and pain and all that. Not because I'm addicted to them. I'm very, very, very lucky that way, but you just can't keep taking that stuff. So I'm hopeful that I'll continue to get better and better. First follow-up appointment with the doctor tomorrow. That'll be interesting. I think it'll go swimmingly, to be honest. But I think it'll be good news, largely. Great to see Mike in the chat. Hopefully he's still listening and or watching. I've been working all the time since the last program. Seems to have gone out and stumbled onto this. It's usually the way most people find us. They make a mistake. They click on the wrong thing. Stumbled on this to see if there was any news about me. I've given you some, and it's very kind of you to be concerned. Truly, believe me, it is. So glad to see you, because I didn't know how. It's watching the show. I got used to. Okay, thank you, sir. It's very kind of you. Remember, part of trickle-down economics is to make us desperate. It's to make us wanton. It's to make us well, I don't have a better word than desperate. I don't have a better word than desperate. To make us so focused on providing and surviving for ourselves and our families. So when anyone can take a minute or two just to reach out to me and say, how are you? How's everything going? It means a lot. It truly does. We have been conditioned, especially since Reagan, to not care about each other, to not continue to believe that we are society, that we are a society, that we are a community. So anytime that somebody who's just slogging through, working 40, 50, 60 plus hours a week, you might not think it takes, what does it take? 5 seconds to type a quick messenger, how are you? It doesn't matter. That thought has to take place. Somebody has to pick up the phone and say, this is important enough that I'm going to send this. Any of you that have reached out, Mike especially, because I see your comment right in front of me. But I got 3D there, didn't it? That was interesting. It does mean a lot, because you have lives and you're trying to slug it through the same way I am. So I've looked better. Maybe Tuesday I'll try to demonstrate the amount of weight I've lost, which, by the way, I really needed to lose the weight. This may not have been the best way, but I will not be bothered by this weight loss, I can tell you that right now. George, of course, is in the chat. It's his anniversary weekend. He should be nowhere near this chat. Should be nowhere near this program. It's his anniversary weekend. So, no excuses there. George is like, sorry, I haven't been on. It's your anniversary weekend. You shouldn't be on. But your anniversary weekend's over tomorrow, so I'm probably going to bother the crap out of you the rest of the week. Yeah, you know what? That's about good. I think I've rambled on long enough. So again, plan. GCPR.live. Villains View pre-show should be starting within 15 to 20 minutes. Show goes live, full throttle, pedal to the metal, from 9 p.m. Conversations with T. Nathan from 11. This is a p.m. Eastern time. All times are Eastern at GCPR unless we tell you differently. Thomas returns tomorrow morning to start your broadcast work week from 8 a.m. with the sound of coffee. My hope also, because I don't think I'm going to be released for work this quickly, but my hope is to join Thomas at some point in the morning this week before I have to go back to work. That said, to all of you, have a wonderful, to everyone at hot101.net, DJ Lex, DJ Earl, and again, hot101.net family, I apologize for the technical problems tonight. I appreciate you being patient and kind with me. To everyone at GCPR, that's Thomas and Gilbert and Gambit, everyone at GCPR, for everyone that surrounds the Kennedy Effect, Lynn and George, who deserve, and my greatest, deepest, warmest wishes for a wonderful, odd timing. Anniversary weekend for Kristen, Daisy the dog, and of course April Riddick. I'm Jeff Kennedy. We'll see you again Tuesday night, Tuesday the 8th. Because of today's the 8th, from 8 p.m. Again, could be me, could be Cole, could be George, could be any combination. So thanks so much, everyone. Deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate it. Please take care of yourselves, and